Hey everyone, welcome back to Field Stories. I am Chris Catola with Michaela Corey, and Nick is not available today because unfortunately we are having to record in the afternoon here on a Monday, and afternoons in the Americas are about 1 a.m. in the good old jolly old England. So Nick's unable to join us this week. We're back after a few weeks of hiatus. We've all been very busy, so trying to get some episodes out there when we can, fighting off bad internet connection, heavy workload, heavy university workload, and so we're back for an episode. So Michaela, I'm sure there's lots to recap, but in general, where are you? And in general, how are you doing today?
In general, I'm in Massachusetts again. And in general, I'm pretty okay. I celebrated my birthday with some good friends last weekend, which was always fun. Went to Portland and Maine and got pretty swifty, so it was a good time.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's a good reason not to do the show last weekend as well. That's very, very justified reason to have a weekend off. So belated happy birthday. Yeah, belated happy birthday from myself and from all our viewers and listeners, I'm sure.
What about you?
I'm in our current research site here in on the edge of Mono National Park in Peru, of course. It's an amazing site. The first time we've been to this site. Very, very cool. Lots of very interesting sightings so far. I've actually, as I was just telling you a minute ago before we hit record, I've got a couple of vipers I've got to process just after dinner here in about an hour. And lots of tapirs around, mammals. He's already seen cats. Lots of crazy stuff here. So a great site. The only thing is it's really, really isolated. Takes anywhere from about 8 to 20 hours to get here by boat and car. So it's quite isolated.
Wow.
So it's been a bit of a logistical challenge, keeping everything going. And also we've had very poor internet for the first 2 weeks. We finally have Starlink, arguably one of the only good things Elon's ever done. But Starlink is... that's maybe SpaceX. I don't know. We'll see, but that's about it. But Starlink's pretty good usually, but I have to say it's been a little bit wonky the first few days. But still, hey, I'm in the Amazon. I am uploading things. I can't complain too much. So so that's basically where we're at. I'm rocking the whole can't really shave very well look. I've got the part in the hair from the headlamp. This is not balding, everybody. I'm just saying. This is actually from the headlamp. I'm serious, because I wear it so much that it actually cuts like my hair. I'm not shitty at all. Yeah. No, it's not though. It's terrible. But look at this. It's because of the headlamp. It's sort of God. It's the Fenix headlamp. By the way, Fenix, you should sponsor me. But Fenix headlamp is legit wrecking my hair. And it's like, I get nervous, right? I'm like, shit, I'm getting old. I'm losing my hair. And then I get out of camp for like about a week and actually get hot water and some conditioner. And like, it's okay. It's there. It's normal. There's nothing wrong. But like, no, I'm not. I'm okay. But this is the headline. Anyway, so that's how I'm doing. I'm doing great overall. Yeah, that's the look. And it's just typical, slightly greasy, overly humid, flat top look. I can't do anything with this hair. So that's me. I'm rocking I can't say what it is in Florida, but it's the crop tank top thing. So I'm literally just not caring about anything right now. That's how things are going for me. So things are going obviously perfect well for you as well. Things are going perfect for me, and I'm sure Nick also is just having the time of his life. So this is the joys, everyone, of conservation field work. Yeah, but we love it, and some of the crazy stuff we've already seen, like emerald tree boas and palm vipers and wipers, and it makes it worth it, right? So yeah, that's the sacrifices, as they say, are worth it. So
I'm in wood turtles, which I guess is pretty cool, but like I want to see some vipers.
Yeah, well, you'll get here one day. You'll get here or Uganda or somewhere someday. It'll happen. So yeah. You're doing good work up there. And I miss turtles. We found 2 turtle species here so far. One tortoise and one turtle. And but generally speaking, turtles are rare here, and I miss being able to just go see turtles. So, So anyways, Michaela, I think you have a guest for us this week. So why don't you do a brief introduction, and then we can get to that interview.
Yeah, I'm really excited. My really good friend Mike Mills, he is a wildlife biologist down in Florida in one of the isolated islands that are pretty well known. And he does a myriad of work from turtles to bats to rats. So I'm really excited to have him on and for him to kind of regale his story, to talk about his conservation efforts, and just to kind of catch up with him. So I'm excited for you to meet him too.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess with no further ado, we might as well get to it. So here we go.
Welcome back to Field Stories. I am your co-host, Michaela Corey, with Chris Catola, and a special guest today, a really good friend of mine, Mike Mills. Mike and I have known each other for a couple of years now. We met at a Turtle Survival Alliance conference and became best turtle buddies. And yeah, I was really excited to have Mike on the podcast today. Mike is a wildlife biologist in the Sanibel-Captiva Conservation Foundation in Florida. And also, we have to mention that he was a former Jimmy John's employee. So that is very important.
Yeah, very important.
Very important. But anyways, why don't you introduce yourself, Mike? Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, like Nick said, I'm Mike Mills. Let's see, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Been in wildlife since, I guess 2016. But moved down to Florida in 2019. It's been down here ever since. Pretty much studying any wildlife I could find in the area on the island of Sanibel.
Cool. So, tell us a little bit about your work right now in Sanibel. I know you do a lot of rare turtle research, but also I know you've been kind of diving into the bats recently, being a trader of the reptile world. So, why don't you tell us a little about that, Mike?
Yeah, on Sanibel, unfortunately, I got my start with sea turtles, but it was a good end to get into the better world of freshwater and terrestrial turtles.
We're gonna have to dive into your hate for sea turtles next.
Oh, there's no hate. It's just
I have hate.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
But yes, I did the nighttime tagging here, starting in 2019, and then moved on to the Florida box turtle radio telemetry project, and did my thesis on that for my master's, just looking at the spatial ecology and population demographics of the Florida box turtles. But I also been doing the same stuff for the Florida mud turtles and the Florida chicken turtles here. And then we also do some research with diamondback terrapins and the gopher tortoises. And it was mostly a freshwater terrestrial turtle focused department, but recently we've been expanding to mammals a little bit. There's an endemic rice rat species only found on Sanibel Island called it's very creative, the Sanibel Island rice rat. And so we've been doing some trapping for them. They're trying to get it listed as an endangered species right now because it's only found on this island. So that's happening right now. I'm a reviewer for the listing too, and kind of going through the preliminary stuff on it right now. But and then I've just always liked bats, so we've been doing some acoustic monitoring for the bats on the island as well. Found 2 more species not previously documented.
Oh, you did? So me getting poison ivy was worth it, putting that on that tree.
I forgot to tell you that SD card actually would spunk. So.
Oh, are you serious? I helped him put up a bat box, and I'm severely allergic to poison ivy. And Mike, it was like, I forgot to put on, my pants, and I was like, I'll do it. And I climbed up this palm tree, and I got the worst poison ivy I think I've ever gotten, where it got systemic in my blood, and it spread all over my body.
I told you to watch out.
Wow.
Yeah.
I said that's poison ivy. Don't touch it, and you touched it.
Okay. I hate you so much. Anyway,
I think the other sites that we recorded for bats, that worked out well, and we got a lot of good data.
that's so good.
But yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, we do like frog call surveys out here. Like fish surveys, kind of smaller ones, mostly the mollies and mosquito fish and stuff. But
That's cool.
yeah, we're trying to dip in a little bit of every kind of wildlife on the island.
Yeah.
Cool. So most of your work then, Mike, is that data going to, like, how is it directly affecting conservation? That is it going back to government policy makers? Is it going to local stakeholders? Exactly where is the sort of the outcome of that? I know it's a big question. People ask us, our organization, that, and it's complicated because it's usually, very complex. But in general, what would you say the outcome of the work you're doing is?
Well, the rice track stuff's directly going to Fish and Wildlife right now to help them with the listing of the rice trails. But the Florida mud turtle that we do the research with, their DOT just came out with a paper on it. But other than that, its natural history's not really well known at all. So a lot of the research we're doing on that is kind of the first stuff with the Florida mud turtles, the spatial, and they estivate for long periods of time too. So we're finding out that one of our radio track turtles actually was estivating for 9 months straight. It was underground. So they've been doing these long periods of estivation. We're trying to figure out reproduction stuff. We think they might lay eggs, the same clutch they might lay at different times because we get them x-rayed. Well, we've actually found out one that had 3 eggs. A month later, we x-rayed it and it had 2 eggs. So, maybe they're retaining them, but looking up at some other mud turtle literature, it looks like they could, be laying these eggs at different times, which would be cool to find out. And also, some of these mud turtles, you see in these freshwater pools, some of them head towards the beach dunes. And, they might be 20 feet from the ocean, and you weren't really thinking that with some of these mud turtles. So I just find a lot of cool stuff. Turtles are facing big problems right now, I'm sure as you guys know. So any natural history stuff we can get, we're going to try to get published and get out there and maybe help conservation where else they're at in the range.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I have a question in terms of, talking a little bit about how the hurricanes are affecting these populations and your work. Especially the recent hurricanes, but like was it Ian?
Yeah,
right?
Ian.
Yeah, Ian, and the most recent one that hit Florida, and especially, when we're thinking about freshwater turtle populations, and suddenly their habitats are inundated with salt water, turning into brackish areas. What happens to these turtles? What have you been noticing with populations? How has it been with your work? I'm sure it's been really difficult.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with Ian. That happened 2022, September. We had box turtles, about 12 chicken turtles, about 12 mud turtles all being radio tracked. And with they all live in these seasonal freshwater wetlands where the salinity's not getting much over 3 ppm. And after Ian, which did about 8 to 12 feet of storm surge across the island, that was up for maybe like 10 to 12 hours. All these wetlands literally became ocean salinity. Like we were getting 28 to 30 ppm on some of these wetlands where our turtles live. And the causeway to the island, this huge bridge, got completely destroyed. So we weren't really able to get back on island and do research right away. It actually took a little bit over a month. But we were able to track most of our turtles within 2 months of the storm. And it was kind of amazing. All of our box turtles didn't really move. They all kind of stayed in the same spot, relative. And the chicken turtles and the mud turtles all just went underground. We saw some initial death, but most of them started estivating. And then, obviously some of them got lost. The salinity can really mess with the radio transmitters and stuff. And that, who knows, maybe some of them got washed away. But what was kind of disheartening was even these turtles that survived the storm and they started estivating because of the high salinity and, all this machinery comes in and it drives over and it crushes these turtles while they're estivating. So that was another thing I was trying to look at, is not just the initial effects of the storm, how they affect the turtles, but these secondary effects, especially in these areas where there's development, these turtles got to watch out for. I'm just trying to think of some other stuff. Oh, so we have over, it's like 1,200 box turtles marked on this island. And most of them were in the same spot since the storm, but, some of them we'd find a mile or two away on the island, which, was interesting. They don't usually have that big of a range of motion. They can move that much, but we were seeing more of it than before the storm. But there's another island that's directly north of Sanibel called Pine Island. I'm not sure what the distance is, but it's kind of like a bay separates Sanibel and Pine Island. And one of our marked box turtles was found on Pine Island after Ian. So he kind of rode that storm surge all the way to another island. And I think a restaurant found him and posted it on Facebook because we mark our turtles with these notches. And they're like, I found someone's pet turtles. There's like holes in them. And I guess my boss saw it on Facebook and he was like, that's our turtle. And we were able to put him back where we originally found him before Ian, and we've been radio tracking him, and he hasn't moved. He's just stayed in the same range. So, there's just a bunch of stuff like that since Ian that we've been finding some really cool stuff. And we want to get it out there, but it might be just a bigger hurricane effect paper than even focusing on one species. And before we could even think about all this Ian stuff, this year we get Helene, which the actual hurricane totally missed us, but it still brought storm surge. It was up to 3 feet on some parts of the island. I was living off island when Ian hit, and I got 3 feet of water in my apartment. And so I was like, okay, well, I was living on a bottom floor apartment. So I actually moved on Sanibel, which sounds crazy, but my house is like 10, 11 feet above sea level. So, I'm actually a lot safer on Sanibel now than I was off of it. But Helene, I got about 5 inches of water up my car, and that was a storm that completely missed us. But, we were like, phew, that was close. But then Milton Lily came the next week, and I just said, I'm out of here. So I went up to Atlanta and stayed with my brother for that, and we ended up getting up to 5 feet of storm surge in some of the parts of the island, which, after Ian, everything kind of looks like a cakewalk, 5 feet of storm surge. But it still is a pretty significant storm surge. The entire island's brown again. All the plants kind of died. They'll come back. More salt tolerant ones will come back, but right now it's pretty brown. Our freshwater systems are back, to like 28, 30 ppm. But all our turtles seem to do pretty well. We've lost signal on some of the chicken turtles, but in terms of like destruction, it wasn't as bad as the end. So there's not as much machinery going on and stuff, but we're just kind of dealing with the effects of that right now. We're taking salinity samples and all that stuff, and I got my bat acoustic boxes, which is actually what made me start the bat monitoring in the first place. Was Ian happened, and I was just like, well, how'd this affect bats? So I started monitoring it, and now we can see how hurricanes affect bats because we got ready for it. But, yeah, it's fun.
Do you have any inkling or any idea about how the bats may be responding to that? Do you have any idea about what kind of roosting sites bats might be utilizing there?
Sure.
Any info on that?
That was my number one concern after the storm was, all these trees that got destroyed. And we made an effort of putting in new bat houses in the areas that got really hit. And those bat houses stayed up since the last surge events, but I guess I'm gonna hit the same spots we've been surveying before the storms and seeing if there's less activity in there, amount of vocal calls and stuff, amount of species we see. But yeah, I'm kind of a bat newbie. My boss is all about turtles, but I was like, can I do bats? He said, yeah, just do everything on your own for it. I was like, okay. So I'll just kind of learning and researching on the go. But
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
No, understandable. Yeah. Have you done any type of surveys looking for roosting sites or exit counts, or is it mostly just acoustics so far?
It's just been acoustics, but we're actually planning on doing that upcoming. We got a scope.
Nice.
When we've been doing the acoustic stuff, I've been taking coordinates of some snags that look like they could be particular spots for bats roost. But I'm working with the Florida Wildlife Commission down here, FWC, and been doing some stuff with them in their Florida Bio Bat research, and been getting a lot of tips and tricks and what research they've been doing. So trying to implement that right now. It'd be cool to see.
Speaking of, Yeah, so I'm kind of curious too, Mike. Being that Florida is like really heavily developing, like at a really, phenomenal rate, honestly, like at a horrible rate. What is that having, especially in like these isolated islands, like how is that having effect on these populations, whether it's turtles or bats or, these rat populations, and how I know that you have some volunteers, but like how much is the public involved? How much do they care? What is this impact and what's going on?
Yeah, I'd say Sanibel is kind of this exception to the rule of Florida development, where when the causeway was built back in the 60s, the organization, the nonprofit I work for right now, Sanibel-Captiva Conservation Foundation, it was started by people that were living on Sanibel before the causeway came in. So these were people that moved to Sanibel. You had to take a ferry, and they just loved the nature and everything. And I don't know if you guys have heard of the Ding Darling National Refuge, but that was started here. And it was actually one of these islands where it kind of started with a conservation mindset. So there's another island, not to talk any crap on it, but there's another island that's just been developed to hell. And that's kind of what Sanibel would have looked like if it wasn't for these people back in the 60s that kind of came in and said, wait, let's make some rules where we can make this sustainable and stuff. And now about 70% of all lands on Sanibel are protected, for conservation and wildlife habitat. So Sanibel is a lot better than a lot of these other spots in Florida, I think, in terms of the chance of the wildlife surviving after the storms, because the habitat actually exists. I mean, the main problem with Florida is they're just destroying the habitat.
Right.
So you don't even have a chance to conserve it or anything. So, yeah, to answer your question, Sanibel's kind of in a better spot than most of Florida. But the other thing is, it's, as sea level rises and, these huge storm surges, and even this protected land, it's a danger to the ocean approach and islands. So, I mean, it's disheartening, but you do what you can. And there's a lot of great people on this island. A lot of people move out to this island because they know and love conservation, and, they help us out and stuff. Mick said I have a lot of great volunteers.
I met one of them. She helped volunteer here in Mass with our bog turtles.
Okay, yeah. Kay's she's
great.
She's I think she did bog turtle work back in the 80s and 90s and stuff. She's got a long history of volunteering with turtles, but yeah, she helps out with our box turtle research. I mean, the reason we have so many marked turtles is because there might be like over 300 people that have my number on this island, and if they see a turtle, they call me. I go out and get it. But no, Sanibel's a great place. The organization I work for is great. Everyone's very conservation minded here. But yeah, in terms, not that there's nowhere else in Florida like this, but a lot of Florida is just getting developed at unsustainable rates.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. Actually, that was going to be my question was going to be what kind of support you get from the local people on that island. It sounds like it's actually really good, which is nice to hear. I guess I would say then, if development is not proceeding at a unchecked rate, and it's just not, kind of unlike other parts of Florida and other parts of the world, what would you say the biggest conservation threats are then for that island, of that ecosystem? I mean, obviously we talked about hurricanes. Obviously there is still some development, but I mean, what would you say if you had to rank it? Like, what are the biggest threats that are ongoing right now?
Yeah, so these storm surge events, they're brutal, but this isn't new to Sanibel. A lot of the habitat, it used to be this Spartina marsh. It used to just be this huge Spartina marsh grassland. Because of storm surges like this and, lightning strikes causing burns, if you come to the island now, there's a lot of tropical hardwood hammock. And that's just recently, even though it's a very conservation-minded island, there still was development that happened, like mosquito ditching and, putting in permanent bodies of fresh water that weren't here before. So now you got like these hardwood hammock habitats. And, you see all these trees dying, but it's just kind of like, if you look at the natural history of Sanibel, these trees have only been here for about 60 years. So you're not really, it's natural, but it's kind of unnatural for Sanibel to see all these woods. So I'm not really too concerned about the storm surge, because that's just always happened on this island. And, from what we've seen from our turtles, they can handle it. But I guess one of the number one things is somehow a shift in the mindset. Some people leave the island and new people come in, and maybe conservation gets put to the wayside. I'm not too worried about that right now. This is like way in the future. But things change. People come and go. But I guess one of the main things, at least with our turtles, was we've actually had problems with poaching. People actually coming on the island and taking our turtles, either to sell in the pet trade or for other reasons, for keeping their own pets or something. But there was a poaching ring in 2019, right when I started, that I think they had like over 1,600 turtles or something. They got busted, and they had a box turtle that was marked from our project. So we mark our box turtles and we put a pit tag and stuff. So we were able to show that one of these turtles actually came from Sanibel, so they're coming out here. Poaching's always a big concern with us out here. You're just always keeping our eyes out, but there's always so much we do with that too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I definitely been seeing that more and more, and I've been discussing with some colleagues of mine about creating some type of AI program because like when these huge confiscations happen, I don't know if that happened in Sanibel or not, but if they're returned back to, their habitat, but a lot of times when they're confiscated, a lot of people don't know where they are. They could have been contracted some disease or viral infection. And so I want to create some AI program that will have like researchers, the general public, whatever, sending it any picture of a carapace and the location of where they found it to like a very protected database that Fish and Wildlife can use and match those carapaces or plastrons with that turtle, and then figure out, it actually came from this place in Vermont, and then be able to eventually return them. But yeah, like, I think that poaching is such a underrated threat to a lot of the reptile community that a lot of people that are not in that community are very unaware of. And so I think it's great that you are talking about that, especially when it comes to an isolated island. I mean, that could wipe out a population so quickly because of their slow sexual maturity rate, and their fecundity is quite low and survival rates. So I think that's really important that you did stress that, Mike.
Yeah, I think it was my third day on the job. We had 300 box turtles. We had to figure out what to do with.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. I did. Well, like you said, I didn't even know it was a thing until I started working here. Then my boss gave me a couple books to read. I realized how big the pond was, but
it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, they weren't fun books. But
there's some depressing things to read. Third day on the job.
Yeah, it's poaching, giant hurricanes. It's the price of paradise, as I tell people.
Well, thank you. Go ahead, Chris. Do you have anything to say?
No, I was just gonna say maybe, yeah. So I mean, this has been great. It's been really interesting learning about this island, and it's it's cool to get a perspective on an island ecosystem and the challenges it faces, and that's really interesting, Mike. I was gonna say maybe it's time. I'm guessing Michaela has prepared you for the crux of the show, the hook of the show, which is your field story. So maybe if you wanted to throw to your field story and share that with us, and I certainly have no idea what it's going to be. I don't know if Michaela has an idea, but I have no idea. So I'm excited to hear. I mean, working in Florida, it could be absolutely anything. I expect it to be kind of crazy. So yeah, man, go for it.
Well, I'll pivot. In Florida, actually. So I did 6 months in Thailand tracking.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah, it's probably, I'm trying to think which one. There's a couple. Well, my first day on the job, you have to take mopeds out to the sites, and I'd never been on mopeds, and anything with two wheels kind of scares me. But they assured me that it was okay, and so I got on the back of a moped, and we're going 45 kilometers per hour on the side of the highway. It's nothing too fast, but then the back tire blew, and we started fishtailing, and then I had to kind of tuck and roll. And first time I rode a moped, everyone's assuring you you're okay, and then I'm not even scared about the moped. I'm afraid of the king cobras, and we're crashing before we can even get out there. And then the driver's screaming in pain. I just me, and I'm like, uh-oh. And I went up to do, and I don't think I'd gotten anyone at the base's number yet. it's literally my first day. And so I'm trying to figure out what to do. And then the local people call a hospital or an ambulance. And the guy shows up and he's just wearing like a Ralph Lauren polo. And then the stretcher gets brought out and it's like a fourth and a second grader. I thought it was just kids or something. And my friend started like, "Don't let him take me without my passport. I need my passport." And so I'm like trying like, "Hey, don't put him on the stretcher." And finally someone just happened to be driving by. They were able to call the base and we got him his passport and everything. Then I don't know. I was like, "Oh, well, what do I do? Do I go out in the field?" And my boss was like, "No, go back to the base." And so I'm hanging out in a hammock, and the guy in charge of the project, he comes to bring the biweekly groceries, and his wife was asking about who was in the crash. I was like, "I was," and she's like, "Oh, is it because you're too fat?" And I was like, "Okay, thanks." Just sit here and laying in agony. So that's just going. Try to think of another one. Oh, there was another project there. We were doing the kings, but another project did the spitters and the monocled cobras. And we would help each other out. If we saw one of our species, we'd chase it down and call the other people. But I was out and I saw, you can't, the monocled and the spitting cobras, you can't really tell till you get close. I saw a cobra, so we kind of ran it down into this rocky crevice. And I didn't handle the cobras, but I would hold the pillowcase. And I called my boss, and he comes out, and I'm like, "Is it a spitter?" And he's like, "No, it's a monocle, because we have like these protective eyewear." So I'm like, "Okay, cool." And I'm holding the pillowcase, and all of a sudden I just feel like wetness on my arm, and I go, "Oh, I think it's a spitter." And he's like, "Oh, so there's just venom on my arm." And I was see, okay. And he's like, "Go get the eye gear," and then we get back to the base. I was like, "I thought you said it was a monocle." He goes, "It is." And then they're like, "Oh no, monocles can spit too. They're just not as accurate." And it's like, "Oh, lucky break." But I'm like, "Yeah, sure."
Oh no.
I think.
I thought there was one where I can't remember, you were in the bush with some jeans looking for a cobra and you literally couldn't see anything. I'm trying to remember. Am I right? Was that you?
Jeans?
Yeah.
I couldn't see anything in my jeans. Oh, I was by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I just felt a sharp pain in my thigh. And it was at night. But I just was like, I think this might be it. And so I was like...
It's over.
Yeah, I was like saying a prayer. But then I think it might have just been a spider. But I just
kept going. You're like,
yeah, I was like, I guess I'll try to go home. But no, it was all good.
All right. Well, unfortunately, Chris keeps dropping out, but we're gonna just end it here. But thanks so much for coming on, Mike. And yeah, he has.
I thought you were just bombing. He just wasn't reacting.
Fuck you. Anyways, no, he has bad service. He's in a bad area in Peru where he just doesn't have good reception. So we are gonna end without him. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Mike. We really appreciate it, and hope to talk to you soon.
All right, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, everyone. That was pretty great. I am really happy to have had Mike on the show, and I think he did a really good job in talking about, island life and how, island conservation and wildlife is kind of different than mainland, and to kind of touch on some more current topics, especially with Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Ian, which was pretty devastating, and to see how that really affected the wildlife population. So I thought, it was really nice to kind of see someone who was, live action and really seeing the effects of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I guess in a way it was encouraging to hear that, that it doesn't seem to have had, at least in turtles, massive impacts. I mean, obviously it impacted their lives individually, but it sounds like the population that's there is able to cope with it. And then I guess that makes sense. As he said, it's a natural event that occurs there to some extent. Obviously, probably the frequency of them and maybe the severity of them is not so natural now because of climate change. But in general, they can obviously withstand some of them. So that's good news. And I also thought it was quite interesting to hear and talk about the fact that that particular island seems to be quite, I don't want to say green-minded, but, very open to conservation. But I mean, he made also really interesting point when he said one of his concerns is that it could change over time as developers move in, and also as people sell, as people get older, as people, decide that they want to move out from the area or pass away, and it moves on. So yeah, that's a window into challenges that we face all over the world in the changing landscape of conservation, right? And what's happening in one place in one period of time is not necessarily how it's going to last. And I guess that's the reason why strong government protection and strong permanent private protection and plans is really needed to ensure survival. But yeah, overall, very interesting, definitely very interesting perspective on, like you said, island conservation in an area that's probably the islands there, other than the Everglades themselves, if you don't get a lot of talk about the actual islands off the coast, Florida Keys, etc. I don't know. I generally don't hear a lot about the conservation status on those islands. So that was a very interesting sort of perspective for sure.
Yeah, I definitely have a little bit of experience just because I've assisted him and another colleague of mine down in Marcos Island, and a couple other islands, and but like to really hear his perspective and kind of get some positive news, especially amongst all the negativity right now, with many things. And I think it is, I think what we tend to forget is that conservation is also volunteer driven. It's about, interest and passion outside of what we put in. And it's great what we put in, but, it's a collaborative effort. And so, one thing I did notice whenever I would go visit Mike and help out is how many volunteers that really, truly cared and would take, their time outside of their day-to-day jobs, which has nothing to do with conservation, and put in that time and effort. And even one of those volunteers actually has helped me with bog turtles, which is really cool.
Wow.
So I know out in Massachusetts, so it was really cool to kind of see that extension. And I did enjoy his story. I mean, I know a ton of Mike's stories, but his cobra experience is always not for the weak of heart. And he's a wild man, let me tell you. Mike is a wild guy, but he's a good friend and great. He's really passionate. And what I really like about Mike is that, going from, he did really start off as a turtle biologist. I don't think he did mention that. And that was his original hiring. And then, he had so many different interests that he kind of expanded his position, which was not only good for him, but for the island too, especially with the lack of knowledge on bats. Here he's taken his time to really, dip his foot into something new, which will be beneficial for so many people. So I'm proud of him.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's really good. And yeah, you're totally right. We do need to engage all aspects of people in conservation, and it sounds like they're doing a good job down there overall. So yeah, super cool. Super cool. Great to have him on. So yeah, I guess that'll be it for this week. We'll see what we can do next week. Again, for all of us, have patience with us. We're all super busy, and patience with me, even with signal. I alluded to the wonky Wi-Fi in the intro, and sure enough, in the episode, I cut out a little bit, and even I'm sure people are getting sick of the shaky camera already. That's because I'm literally just standing on a pathway around me of camp, just like literally using my hand as a platform for my computer. So everything's a little wonky today, but this is the joy of working in the field, as we said in the intro. So we'll see what we can do next week. Hopefully we can get the three of us together and get some awesome guests for our next episode. But thanks for having Matt on and bringing him on, Mick. And I guess we'll see everybody next week.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Ciao.